Thank you guys for coming out today. You guys have probably forgot more about the JFK assassination than I'll ever know, so I'm still going to ask you some questions, and I appreciate your, just how dogged you guys have been on this for decades. Mr. Morley, I want to start with you. What is the most interesting information you found in this newest release of documents on the assassination of President Kennedy?
The 9 memos about James Angleton that were fully declassified on March 18th is the most important collection that I've seen so far. There is a lot of information that has come out. Jim mentioned the Arthur Schlesinger memo. That really sets the stage for the alienation between the Kennedy White House and the CIA that lasted for the rest of Kennedy's presidency. So I would say that the Angleton memos and the Schlesinger memo are the most important things I've seen so far.
Thank you. Mr. Morley, do you believe that Oswald was recruited and being handled as a source for the CIA?
I believe Oswald was an agent of influence who was manipulated by the CIA.
Okay. And as I was going through some research, one of the things that I found interesting, and please correct me if I'm mistaken here, any of you guys on the panel, but Mr. Underhill, who was a CIA agent himself, who apparently left D.C. the days after the assassination in a hurry, Gary Underhill then confided in a friend that a clique within the CIA had assassinated Kennedy. He also told his friends that he may need to leave the country and that he feared for his life. Mr. Underhill was then found dead 6 months later. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Morley. Do you find those types of stories surrounding Mr. Underhill to be credible?
Mr. Underhill was hardly alone in suspecting CIA involvement of the assassination. President Harry Truman suspected it, President Johnson suspected it, and President Richard Nixon suspected it. So I think that Gary Underhill was a man who worked in the intelligence community and was in a position to know something. His story's not confirmed, but it's consistent with what lots of other people thought.
What was his title? Do you remember, Mr. Morley?
He was not a CIA employee. He was an arms dealer who assisted CIA in acquiring weapons and shipping them.
Do you know how he died, Mr. Morley?
I don't know anything more than was reported in the documents.
Mr. Eugenio, do you know how he died?
Eugenio.
Sorry about that.
You're not the first one.
Yeah. Do you know how he died, sir? Underhill. Mr. Underhill.
Gary Underhill. Do you know how he died?
Gary Underhill?
Yeah.
Gary Underhill his body was discovered by his friend Asher Burns, who was a magazine writer at the time. And the door was open, ajar a little, and Burns entered the room, and he thought Underhill was sleeping. But as he approached the body, he saw that there was a hole, a bullet hole in his head, all right? Asher Burns was so disgusted by the investigation that came after that he didn't even want to talk about what had happened. But one of the things about the Underhill death is that for him to have taken his own life, the gun was in the wrong hand, okay? All right, so that was one of the most puzzling things, about that particular case. Underhill has been, I believe, very much ignored, by a lot of people, and I'm glad that this memo finally got out there.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Morley, are you familiar with Michael Franchese, who is a capo for the Colombo family?
I've appeared with him twice on the Piers Morgan show. That's all I know.
Okay, thank you. He claims that the mob was involved in this hit since the deal between the Kennedys and the mob was broken after the election. Do you find that to be credible?
I think Mr. Franzene's contention that the organized crime role in President Kennedy's assassination is very clear, and he said that it was common knowledge among the crime bosses who he dealt with that their role in the assassination was to eliminate the chief witness, Lee Harvey Oswald. Mr. Franzene said that both times when I was on Piers Morgan with him, and I believe him.
Yeah, thank you. This question is more based on the future, or I should say the present day. After 2 assassination attempts of President Trump within the last year, and the little that we now know about Thomas Crooks and Ryan Routh, Do any of you guys on the panel believe that we are seeing history repeat itself?
No.
Mr. Stone?
I expressed my own surprise that so little do we still know about Mr. Crooks and the other assassination attempt. So I would see similarities here.
Thank you. I'm out of time. I yield back.